2 minutes past 5. Maybe we can wait for 1 or 2 minutes for other people coming. For those who are joining us tonight, I want just to remember how it works. Riyad, professor in Melbourne University of Technology in Melbourne, will give his presentation for about 1 hour. Then we will have time for questions or discussion. If during the presentation you have any comments or question, you can do it in the chat area, in the public area, so that we can keep the question in mind during the talk. And if you want, you are also able to make discussion, but you have to raise your hand to ask your question if you need. But I think the best way is to use the chat area. So I would like to thank Riyad for his presentation. It's the fifth presentation this year on webinars. On Monday we have some technical troubles, so Kent Harris was not able to give his presentation, and it has been postponed to next week, end of next week, 10 of April, same time as last Monday. Sorry about that, but there were a big technical problem on the platform. Well, Riyad, are you ready to start?
Yes, I am. Okay. Can you hear me well?
Fine, very well, perfect.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Manuel, for that introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Yes, my name is Riyad Al-Mahidi. I'm from Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne, Australia. And I would like to share with you some of our experiences in field applications of FRP and bridges, FRP applications and bridges in Australia. As you are all well aware of the fact that our infrastructure is in real crisis, and this is a story that is told everywhere. It's not specific to any European or North American or third world countries. It's all over the world. So, as we know, a very large percentage of today's civil infrastructure is old. In fact, it is deteriorating, and the ability of many of these structures to sustain much of the modern load is becoming a big challenge, and therefore there is a strong need to retrofit or even, in some cases, to reconstruct our infrastructure. Just to give you an idea here about what we face in Australia, I would like you to have a look at these 4 photos of the type of loading that our bridges are subjected to. So, for example, if you look at up to 1926, the maximum load that a bridge would experience would be this 15-ton traction engine. And many of these bridges that you see in that little old photo are still on the road network. And we are now demanding many of these bridges to carry much bigger masses of truckloads. For example, now we have got the semi-trailer, 42.5 tons. We have got the B-double of 62.5 tons, and the B-triple of 90 tons, and that is increasing, and that's going to be increased what we call now the road trains, which I will not show in this, but these are on special roads. We do allow what we call road trains. I'll jump in straight to the issue of strengthening. And when we want to strengthen such structures, obviously the FRP systems have proven to be a very strong competitor to other traditional methods of strengthening. As you will all know, I mean, the FRP is lightweight, non-corrosive, high tensile strength. They come in different shapes and forms, and whether it's a sheet or whether it is a plate or even rods and bars. And they also have, all of them, they have got this characteristic that they are lower in installation costs because of the fact that of their lightweight, and they do not require heavy lifting, heavy equipment. I'm going to tell you the story here of the Westgate Bridge project in Melbourne, Australia, which is considered to be the largest project in the world in terms of the amount of composites used in any one project to strengthen this bridge. So I'm going to tell you this story. Then I will go to the technical aspects of the type of technique that we have used in the strengthening of this bridge. So I'll give you the outline of the bridge, what we applied in this, the amount of FRP that we used, and then we will move into some technical aspects to show that what we have used in here to make efficient use of composites in this bridge. So the Westgate Bridge in Melbourne actually connects the two parts of the city, which is considered, this bridge is considered a very, very strategic bridge in Melbourne. Strategic from the point of view, obviously, of traffic. The economy of the state actually depends highly on the adequate performance of this bridge. As you can see in this, the bridge actually consists of the central part, which is a cable-stayed steel bridge, which was strengthened, but not with FRP. And this bridge has got approach spans, 38 approach spans from the west and from the east. And these approach spans are post-tension segmental constructions box girders. It's these portions that have been strengthened with FRP. The steel component of the bridge was strengthened with something else. Some additional plating was used, some propping was used to strengthen this part of the bridge. And so I will be focusing on the concrete parts of the bridge because FRP was used in the strengthening of these. So what is the issue with this bridge? As you can see here in this cross section, actually there's nothing wrong with the bridge. What you see here is that the volume of traffic of this bridge has increased tremendously. So what the Road Authority decided to do, this bridge was designed as a 4-lane bridge in each direction, 4-lane bridge. With a side here and with a lane on the side, which is an emergency lane. What the Road Authority decided to do is to make this bridge a fully operational 5-lane bridge. In other words, abandoning the side lane or the emergency lane. So here we have from 4-lane bridge in each direction to a 5-lane bridge in each direction, meaning that you have got a huge increase in the load, and also you have got not just increase in the load, but also from the point of view of that the part of the cantilever that's going to be now heavily loaded, meaning that you are going to have the cantilever carrying much higher loads, and number two, you have got huge torsional stresses developed in the box girder of this bridge. Now, if you look at, to give you the project summary here in terms of how much FRP we used in this bridge, number one, as I said before, as a project summary, the bridge was when it was first built in 1978, it was carrying 40,000 vehicles a day. Now it is carrying 160,000 freight and commuter vehicles each day, not only in the number of vehicles, but also the mass. The mass limits have increased. It's considered the largest bridge ever repaired with carbon fiber. In total, about 40 kilometers of carbon fiber laminates of various grades and dimensions were applied to the structure, along with 11,000 square meters of carbon fiber fabric. And this work was completed in December 2010. Okay, I would like to show you here the bridge dissected. It's like an exploded view of this bridge. The span of each of these approach spans is 68 meters. Now, the bridge is, as I said, post-tension segmental box girder bridge. Each component of these box girders, the length of it is about 4 meters, 3.8 meters, and the depth of it is about 4 meters as well, and the width of it is 14 meters, excluding the cantilevers. And the cantilevers here are also precast elements, and these are attached to the spine of the box girder by external post-tensioning. So so literally the entire bridge was put together segment by segment, and the cantilevers were attached to the spine component by component, and then precast planks were placed on the top of the bridge, and then there was a cast in situ concrete to put it all together to make it an integral bridge. Okay, so that's the bridge, and as I said, what we needed here, because of the fact that we have increased the amount of load on it, we are getting what the initial analysis has shown was that the bridge under this new combination of loads is going to be deficient in flexure, shear, and torsion. As far as flexure is concerned, what the bridge authority and the original designers of this system, they decided to go for external post-tensioning. So that's what you see here. These are extensional. These are cables that are used as an external post-tensioning system. You see here the black here on the web of the bridge. This is the red ones on the web of the bridge. These are carbon fiber, of course, and you have got the red things here is the epoxy here. So essentially, this is what the box girder would look like here. So we needed to strengthen the soffit of the box girder and the web of the box girder. Why? Because we are talking about here shear and torsion. This bottom strengthening here, lateral strengthening, is for torsional effects. Now, obviously here, because we are using laminates, the laminates cannot be bent around the corner of the box girder, so the laminate will terminate here for the web, it will terminate here for the bottom flange, and then some sort of a fabric layer or a number of fabric layers were applied around the corner to maintain the continuity of stresses and transfer of stresses from the web to the flange and from flange to the web. So that this splice, that is how what was used in it was simply fabrics in there. Okay, now the cantilevers, as you can see, this is a cross section here. This is the cantilever portion. Obviously, because of the heavier load here, the cantilever needed strengthening at the top of the cantilever segment here using the additional FRP. And the thickness of the FRP that was used here, these are laminates that are specially made for this bridge, 4 millimeter thick laminates. So they are not off-the-shelf type of laminates. They were specifically manufactured for this bridge. Not only would the cantilever itself require strengthening, but the root of that cantilever, which is this stub here that is transferring the load to the box girder, because of the thinness of the section here, it required strengthening confinement because the level of stress in there in the concrete was in excess of the allowable strength of concrete, and that is why some sort of confinement of RP was used to increase the strength of that portion of the concrete in that portion. And the typical web strengthening layout, you simply put vertical laminates in the webs. Of course, as part of aspects of the construction here, you have got surface preparation, which is extremely essential. You can use all kinds of grit blasting to determine to come up with a surface roughness of approximately between 0.5 to 1 millimeters. And water jetting was used to remove the dust and debris. Pull-off strength was for sacrificial FRP was used using 50 millimeter dollies, and the tensile strength that was specified in this bridge should not be less than 2 MPa. Although ACI 440 specifies 1.5 MPa specifically to this bridge, we require 2 MPa as the minimum pull-off strength, tensile strength. The application process, obviously, when you have got laminates in here, you have got you prepare the laminates, you clean the surface, then you do your mix, two-part epoxy, and there are different ways of applying the FRP through some sort of a mold like this one that will ensure that you have got the epoxy that is going to be on the surface of the FRP laminate to be in a kind of in a form that is going to give you a higher thickness in the middle of the laminate than on the side. It's kind of a sloped type of profile for the epoxy, and that way when you apply it to the surface of the concrete, it can, and you press on it, it can ooze out from inwards towards the outside, and therefore you eliminate as much of the bubbles and cavities as possible. The application here, as you can see, this is using the bottom soffit of the box girder here, and you know, the number of workers required here is simply to put this in place. It's not because the material is heavy, no, it's a very lightweight, but it's simply because of the length of the laminate, and you needed some sort of a number of workers there to apply it to the soffit of the box girder. These are some shots of the cantilever. You can see here in the cantilever part where you have got the top laminate, and you can see here at the root of the cantilever here the stub of the cantilever, the confinement that I spoke about before, confinement of the concrete in this area. Now, so what were the issues in this bridge? I showed you the final product, but now to reach at that final product, a number of issues were faced in making decisions about what the best technology is in terms of the application of the FRP system. As you know, the primary shortcomings of FRP is this issue of delamination, and this has been researched by many researchers all over the world, and they have come up with design guidelines, whether it's in the Eurocode, FIB design guidelines, or ACI 440, or the Chinese and the Japanese standards, and now we have got a new Australian standards that's being developed for bridges. All of them, they use the research outcomes of dealing with the early delamination of FRP and how to prevent that. As you know, in Flexure, there are a number of scenarios how the FRP is going to be. It's very rare that the FRP itself is going to break. Usually, your weakest thing is the concrete cover, as you can see in this classical type of failure that happens when you have got FRP here at the bottom. This is in Flexure. So this is something, this depends on the the amount of FRP that you are using, the concrete strength, concrete cover, and so on. So all of these are going to decide whether you get end cover peeling like this, or what we call mid-span, intermediate crack here, or combined shear and flexural cracks. So these are things that happen, but these are the different types of delamination modes in flexure. And if you look at for shear strengthening, it's the same thing happens here when you have got. It's also there is a delamination issue, and it's usually free plate end delamination. Typically, this is what you will see in shear. If you have got these L-shaped stirrups, external stirrups that we put as part of FRP strengthening of T-beam bridges, you get this kind of pull-off or that kind of pull-off at the top of the laminate. So this is always the case. This is what you get when you have when delamination occurs. When we were doing the shear strength, torsional strength design for the Westgate Bridge, we looked at ACI 440 for guidance. And ACI 440 requires that the effective strain limit in the carbon fiber laminates, it is to be calculated in a certain, according to this certain procedure, and these are all based on the issue of delamination, provided that the upper limit is 0.4%. And this 0.4% is there to maintain or to ensure that the crack width is not going to exceed a certain limit, because once the crack width exceeds a certain limit, you lose the aggregate interlock mechanism. So when we did the calculations for the demand of RP force in the web and in the flange, what we found was that based on these equations for the Westgate Bridge and the material properties of the Westgate Bridge, we found that the maximum usable strain is 0.0018. In other words, 0.18%. And the limit, according to ACI 440, is 0.4%. In fact, the limit of the FRP to cause fracture of the FRP itself is really about 1.5%. So the utilization here is less than, it's about 15% of the total strength of the laminate. And it's less than 50% of the maximum allowable limit as per ACI 440. So clearly, this is a very poor utilization of the material. And that is where we started to look for some solutions for this problem, trying to make the system more efficient. And so we looked in the area of anchorage systems. And we know that FRP and anchorage systems have been successful in many flexural applications. The problem is that there are some research papers that describe the behavior of RP strength in concrete structures with certain types of anchorage systems, but there's really no design guideline. It's being developed as we speak now. I mean, the design guidelines are being developed to look into the efficiency of RP anchorage systems. So the implementation here of RP anchorage system, ACI 440 talks about, yes, as a designer, you are allowed to use anchor systems provided that you do due diligence in doing some experimental / theoretical work to ensure that your anchor system is indeed going to give you the desired results. So we started looking and we started to do a lot of experimentation to come up with an efficient anchor system for the Westgate Bridge. Now, typically, when you look in the literature a lot of people, some researchers have used, in applications that is, they have used end steel plating at the end here. And also, for example, this is in flexure, in shear, they would use some sort of anchors at the end of the laminates, like these. Okay. If you look at other researchers and applications, for flexure, they use U-jackets, and the U-jackets can be vertical or inclined at 45 degrees. And in some situations, they used kind of a pre-stressing in the U-jacket by inserting some sort of sleeves at the bottom here. If you look at other applications of anchorage systems, some researchers advocated the use of mechanical fasteners, or if not mechanical, in addition to mechanical fasteners, some researchers advocated the use of inserts. You cut into the concrete and you insert your laminate and you epoxy that with appropriate adhesive. Now, the problem with Westgate, and some researchers also use the issue of fiber of RP anchors, different types of RP anchors that mesh in with and this is much more useful with not with laminates but with fabrics. And simply you insert like some sort of a dowel anchor here of RP dowel anchor, and that meshes in, wedges with the carbon fiber sheets on the top here. So this has proven also to be successful, particularly for the case of fabrics, not laminates. Any of these solutions, as far as the Westgate Bridge was concerned, were rejected for the simple reason that you have got very high forces of internal post-tensioning strands. So no drilling was allowed. Everything has to be on the surface. So no drilling was allowed according to the consultants. So everything here has to be external. So we started thinking about a simple solution in the form of bidirectional fabric. And this is what you see. This is your laminate here. And it's really, the idea is very simple. So we say here is that if we apply a bidirectional fabric here at the end, and the bidirectional fabric here is plus minus 45 degrees, what we are calling this patch anchor. And what this is going to do is that it is going to spread the load in the laminate to the adjacent concrete. So basically you are increasing the bond area. Yeah, in principle that is correct, but it needed to be proven. So we carried out an extensive amount of testing, and when I said we carried this out, we carried it out while the material was being ordered for the Westgate Bridge. So literally we were working day and night to come up with this solution of the patch anchor that can be utilized in the bridge, and thus saving a lot of material. So we use the single lap shear test on concrete blocks of concrete strength that is of similar qualities to the concrete of the Westgate Bridge. And we carried out many of these tests with the bidirectional fabric, and that bidirectional fabric, the width of it, the length and width of it as a variable, and also we looked at number of sheets that we used, the plus minus 45 degrees, whether 1 or 2 sheets would be sufficient, and so on. So we covered that with many experiments to try to come up with an efficient patch anchor solution. And these are many photos of during the test. Obviously, here the preparation in the laboratory for the patch anchors. The red here, this is your layer of bidirectional fabric at the bottom, and then you have the laminate adhesive, then the laminate, and on top of the laminate we put another layer of bidirectional fabric. Okay, so what you see here is that the patch anchor under testing, this is the laminate being test pulled and single lab shear setup. What you see here is that we use photogrammetry, and this photogrammetry, image correlation photogrammetry, to give a full field strain profile of the carbon fiber composite here. We used strain gauges, but we relied heavily on photogrammetric measurements to determine the deformations and strains on the surface of the carbon fiber. Very successful technique. And these are the dots. These are the these are the speckle pattern, random speckle pattern that's used on the surface. And we strongly recommend that this technique be used as a non-contact measuring technique, quite efficient, quite accurate. In addition to that, we did a lot of adhesion testing to ensure that the type of concrete that we have and the application is of comparable quality to the what was being used on the Westgate Bridge. And these are some failure mechanisms of the laminates for the control specimens and without the bidirectional fabric. And this is with the bidirectional fabric. As you can see here, is that the whole system works together. So when you have the patch anchor debonding, it's really engaging a much bigger area of concrete in bond. And that will explain why we were getting a very good level of failure loads. So just to give you an example here, in the control specimen where there was no patch anchor, the failure load was about 100 kilonewton, 99.6 kilonewton. The strain level was 0.25%. Remember the calculations that we did in one of the slides? It was saying maximum allowable is 0.18%. I mean, experimentally that amounts to this, because if you are going to apply a lot of reduction factors for variations that could occur in the concrete, variations in the experimental results. So that's about right, 0.25 when that gets reduced to 1.18%. When we started using the patch anchors, this is the level of strain that we were achieving, in excess of the 0.4%, which is the maximum limit allowed by ACI 440. So it's quite successful, and we were comfortable with these results, and they were repeatable. We looked at the strain distributions along the ends. By the way, here, these strain distributions were measured with strain gauges as well as the image correlation photogrammetry. And the correlation was fantastic. And we are very comfortable now in using the image correlation photogrammetry rather than and reducing the number of strain gauges that we put in our testing. Again, some of the experimental results about the distribution in the bidirectional fabric. You can see here in the lateral, in the distance away from the laminates, they are carrying very high stress and dropping to the edge of the bidirectional fabric to nearly zero. So the bidirectional fabric is quite efficiently engaged in distributing the lap force from the laminate to the adjacent concrete. What we also found was the influence of adhesive, the type of adhesive on the anchored strength. The better quality adhesive was, these were standard, we call them adhesive A, B, C, D, E, F, for the laminate adhesive, for the saturant adhesives. These are, big companies that produce, the standard companies that produce these adhesives, but we didn't want to give just put like gives symbols for them, A, B, C, D, E, F, rather than giving the actual name of the product at this stage. So what we saw that for example, adhesive F here, which has got a much higher tensile strength than the other adhesives, really resulted in a much better and more efficient type of patch anchorage system in increasing the utilization of the laminates. And this has, in fact, one of them was, this adhesive has given us up to 6,000 microstrain, 0.6%, nearly 0.6% if you take the average of these two. So that's quite an efficient way of improving the performance of these patch anchors, is to use better quality adhesives. And you can see here with these adhesives, the entire patch is pulled off, and it's pulling off concrete. And there is no failure in the adhesive itself. Concrete is your weakest layer, but over a much bigger area, and it is giving you the maximum utilization that is required according to the ACI guidelines. So the influence of adhesive on the anchor strength, what we saw was that you can get as much as 2 to 3 times strength enhancements when compared to the control specimens without the patch anchors, and the high strength adhesives prevented premature laminate slippage at a lower load. That happens usually at a lower load when you use low strength adhesives. We combined our experimental work with extensive, very sophisticated finite element simulation, which took into account every part, every component of this composite, with the epoxy, with the layers of the epoxy and the concrete. And the model here considered all the sources of material nonlinearity in concrete: crushing, cracking, nonlinear compression, compression behavior of concrete, and these concrete softening and concrete tension softening, and so on. And the same thing with the adhesives and the bond slip between the carbon fiber and the adhesive and the concrete. And these were, and this is not a good slide here, I don't know when in the transformation to the PDF, but the material model took all the material nonlinearities, and also a fracture energy approach was used for the cracking of concrete. And based on that, a non-linear bond slip model was developed, which was, when we used it, it really gave us a very good FEM correlation with the experimental results, as you can see in these plots of the strain distribution, not only in the load slip, load versus strain in the FRP, but also the distribution along the length of the laminates and the failure mode. This technique of improving the utilization of the laminates has become a standard technique now in Australia, and most of our bridges that are being strengthened, other than the Westgate Bridge, they are using this technique of the patch anchor at the end of the laminates. As you can see here, okay, this is one of the bridges, highway bridges. These are the vertical laminates. These are the patch anchors. And the 4.4% utilization of laminate and tensile strain were utilized in this bridge. Once again, if without these patch anchors at the end, the laminate level of strain, or allowable strain, would not have been more than 0.15 or 0.18%. So you do save a lot in the material, and you make more efficient use of it when you provide a good anchorage system like the patch anchor. A very simple technology, as you can see here in another bridge. is also used, this technique. Another bridge as well. So this has become kind of a standard way of improving the laminate performance in Australia throughout the States. And we are happy with that technology, with that technique. And it's also being incorporated in the new AS 5100, Australian Standard 5100, which is the bridge design code of Australia. More shots of that, closer shot of the laminates and the bidirectional layer of fabric. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to answer any of your questions if you have any questions.
So thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Emmanuel.
Very nice presentation, very interesting with the application of the anchor in the shear strengthening. Well, we are waiting for any question you may have. Well, it seems that none are coming. I was wondering, Riyad, if you have on the part on the device you used to get the strain profile, were you able to compare this to the literature model? There is a lot of local bond stress model using this technique in order to get the local high shear stress in the adhesive. Did you try to compare your results with available law in literature?
Yes, we have done that. In fact, there is a paper that is going to appear soon, which is based on the strain stress measurements and the development of bond stress in the zones of the anchorage zones, and to compare them with those models that are available in the literature. And we found very good correlation with those, based on the full field measurements of strain levels from which we develop the bond stress distributions, and we did find that there was a good correlation with those models.
Okay, so there is one question coming. Seems appearing in the chat area. What about durability issue? I think maybe the question is about the FRP materials applied on external bridges. Have you to check about this issue?
Sorry, the durability you said?
Yes, the question is right in the public area, chat public area.
Yes. The durability issues here, I mean, a lot of people have done a lot of work, including Emmanuel. They have done a lot of work on durability from the point of view of moisture, cyclic temperature.
Yes, I think it's moisture and temperature. Have you done some tests about your
high temperature, like fire? Because this is another issue. I'm talking about environmental, extreme environmental issues such as high temperature variations, as well as humidity. And what have we done on accelerated testing of cyclic temperature, cyclic humidity? There was a reduction in the bond strength, but what we found was the maximum reduction in bond strength was in the order of 15%, and this was like due to variations of temperature between 20 to 50 degrees. And also relative humidity, very high relative humidity of 90 to 95%. So we have done some accelerated testing. Other people also have done a lot of tests on these. And so really durability is, in my view, is well taken care of with this system. The important thing in the durability issue is the epoxy itself and the type of epoxy and the surface preparation of the concrete.
Okay.
Is there any code in Australia for FRP strengthening? Yes, it's being developed. AS 5100. I'm on that group. We have written design guidelines, and they are going to be normative. So this is going to be part of the code for FRP strengthening. And yes, that is which should appear sometime this year. I expect it to appear between July and August.
Okay, very, very interesting. I would be interested in this issue also. About the patch you shows, will it be included in this design? Is it well accepted by the field, engineer field, or is it only one thing you've done once on a bridge? Is it well accepted, this kind of improving anchorage? I'm mentioning this because the problem of anchoring in the case of shear is a real big problem we have in France in such kind of strengthening. And I would be very interesting to know if in Australia it's well accepted to improve the bonding with this kind of patch.
It has become very well accepted now. Many bridges, after the Westgate Bridge, many bridges were strengthened using this technique. And in Melbourne and Perth and Brisbane, they have used it. But this is all based on the research papers that we have published and the design guidelines that we have produced after the work of the Westgate Bridge. So yes, it has become an accepted technique in Australia.
Okay, well, is anybody has an additional question? It seems that your presentation was very clear. For all of you, there will be a next webinar. This webinar will be available for replay. You can send the link to any of your colleagues. It's free. The link will be available in about 1-2 hours. There is some time for all this presentation record. And I will, of course, be able to send this link, and it will be in the IIFC newsletter also, so, and on the website also. So if you can ask it by email. Then, Riyad, I would like to thank you again for this very nice and original presentation. And well, see you next time in a IIFC conference or elsewhere.
Thank you, Manal, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you. Okay, goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.